Welcome to episode 3 of On Target. You join us today on this beautiful day in November, out in France, at a beautiful lake called the Tangler Fays. I'm going to get some photos done of this common. I'm going to slip her back and I'll sit down and we're going to have a good old chat about everything that's been going on so far in my angling life this year. The last time we caught up, the last time Gaz joined me on the bank was over at Reading, way back in April, seems a long while ago now. After that, it was a case of like spring was upon us. And before you knew it, everything was green, everything was looking really nice. But what seemed to happen over on Inglesfield was the fish just seemed to go way off out into the middle of the lake, into a no angling zone where there was no pressure on them, we couldn't get anywhere near them. There's some good casters over there and they weren't getting in the zone either. You know, some of these guys were fishing 35, 37, 38, 40 wraps and they were still falling short, but at least they were getting nearer than most people. I decided to concentrate down the other end of the lake where after being on there for a few years, I know that they will get up that end to spawn. But it just seemed to me like they were up the top end, sitting in that eelgrass, feeling confident. Every morning they were showing there, every single morning. Without fail, you'd keep your eye on that zone and you'd see them. And it's a little bit, off-putting when you're sitting up the other end of the lake, knowing you're nowhere near them. But as before, when I caught white tips, they do venture down there. And I was there waiting, trap set, keeping the bait going in. Because I had I had four fish from that area. And they just turned up on me and I had 2 or 3 bites. So it's a good place to be. I was in the block swim and I know that if they turn up to spawn later on, hopefully they will turn up in a group and there's a good chance that the black will be there. She comes from that area. I've done my homework over the years and I know that she does get caught from that end of the lake prior to spawning. So that was my plan. They can stay up that top end in no man's land for as long as they like. And I was going to stick to my guns and spend most of my time down the other end of the lake. Unfortunately, it was getting hard for me to regularly get in the same swim to get anything going. That's the nature of the game. That this happened, you can't do nothing about that. And it was getting hotter and warmer. And I think sometime in May, they hadn't really been up the top end much. The odd fish got caught from the stumps, but they'd not really been up the end much. Still predominantly spending all their time at the top end in that out of zone area. I persevered with it, and one Thursday I went home as I normally do on a Thursday. A friend of mine rang me and said, look, they've turned up in front of the stumps, a few fish have been caught, and the next thing I knew they were spawning. That kind of finishes it for me over there in the spring. Once they start to spawn, it could go on for days, weeks, and I don't really want to be there fishing for them whilst they're in that mood. I don't want to fish for them after they've spawned or during their spawning. It's just something I won't get involved in it. So basically, I was off the lake. And at that particular time, as you all know, we had one of the hottest summers in history. Because of that, I decided to stay at home. I've got my own fishery to look after. Fisheries were on red alert all summer. The water temperatures were sky high. I didn't want to be away from home, to be honest. I just decided that I wasn't going to go back to the autumn. The black came out during the spawning time, just before or just after, I can't really remember. I wasn't bothered. Didn't think it wasn't going nowhere, so I thought I can always get back in the autumn and carry on with my pursuit for this fish. I mean, to be honest, it's probably the only one there that I really want. It's the only one out of all of them I've caught most of them, if not all of them, and that was the only one I wanted. So plans were to stay on my fishery, keep an eye on the fishery, make sure everything's all right, you know, like oxygen levels and what have you, because across the country there was a lot of problems this year. And that's what I did. I stayed at home, got lots of work done around the fishery, done a little bit of fishing here and there. Couldn't really get into my own personal fishing because all that was going on in my mind was I need to get back on the chase. The summer went on and it was absolutely scorching, as we all know. And then it must have been late summer. I got a call off of a friend saying that they'd found the remains or a corpse of a fish. Yeah, I mean, we're not 100% sure, but it's a good possibility that it is the baby black. And absolutely, that news destroyed me, to be honest. I put a lot of effort into being over there, nearly 4 years. Yeah, caught most of the fish on the fishery, and then the one I'm after, the only one I'm after, possibly has gone. But it's not 100%. I'm not in no way, shape or form saying it has gone. You know, I'll keep my fingers crossed that it'll get caught soon, and then I'll be back over there on the hunt in March. But as it stands right now, there's a good possibility it has gone. It's not been caught. You know, the similarities in the bone structure of the fish and different bits and pieces on the bones of the fish, like the grooves you could see, were very, very similar to pictures of the black. And devastated. If it's gone, I'm absolutely devastated because I so dearly wanted to catch it. I came so close so many times and it wasn't to be. But like I say, if it's there, if it gets caught, then happy days, and I'll be back over there early next spring. With that, I sort of concentrated on my own fishery, obviously getting the rods out. Wasn't really catching. I caught a couple. It fished really hard over mine in the summer. I managed to catch a couple of little ones, and once in my mind that the black's possibly not there no more, I then went flat out and thought to myself, right, let's just put some effort in now, try and catch something. I had a particular fish in my mind. I always like to have a particular fish in my mind, something that I'd like to catch. I've caught a lot of the fish out of Carthagena, but I've not caught all of them. I've been there 20 years now, and some of them fish, a lot of them fish in there when I caught them many years ago, were a lot different to what they are now. Some of them have grown. For instance, there's a fish there called June. It's an amazing carp, absolute beautiful fish. I have caught it when it was 20 odd pound, and now it can go up to 44. So for me to catch a fish like that, it's like I haven't caught it when it's that big, although I have, but it's like I haven't. So they're fish that I'd like to have a go for and catch them again. Like Tango, I was the first person to ever catch Tango out of my fishery at £40, and it's possibly £55 right now. Who wouldn't want to catch a 50-pounder out of their own fishery? Anyway, so I was on the hunt over there, and one particular fish that is a very, very rare one is the unknown. Doesn't really come out too often. It's one that I dearly wanted to catch. It hadn't been out for a year. A few weeks back now, I was mid-session, and I managed to catch one of the 40s out of there, a fish called Neptune, which I was overjoyed with. And then I had a smaller 24, and I've been watching where they were bubbling, and I moved swims and tried to fish to that zone, and had a real sort of subtle take one night. Bobbin just pulled to the top and stayed there. The line clip had been pulled, and the fish was on. It kited left and weeded itself up. You know, a little bit of bending into it, getting the weed bed moving, and she was up on the surface. Cut a long story short, this big old mirror slipped into the net, and it was the unknown. So, happy days. That was one of my targets for the autumn. Went 48.8, which is a very, very big weight for that fish. Looked absolutely incredible. Yeah, I was blown away. Real old 50-year-old carp, little round towel, absolutely beautiful. I've caught that fish, but 20 odd pound many years ago, so absolutely made up with that, and that was my winter sort of like target, so to speak. And because I'm not actually going back to Reading at the moment, I've got a really good friend of mine, Mark Eldridge, and he bought a lake in France some 20 odd years ago, around about the same time that I moved into Carthagena. I've been out here a few times, and I've seen this place change from day one to what it is now, and he's absolutely done wonders with the place. I mean, it is a credit to him. He's worked very, very hard over here, and now he's got this beautiful place, and he lives on site. It's an incredible place, and as much as I'd like to get over here, I don't fish in France, to be fair. I spend so much time in the UK, And he's been always come over, and I don't really get the time. I've been with my wife, and he's got a beautiful lodge here. We've stayed in a lodge a few years back, and it's more of a holiday than fishing, catching up with friends and that. Anyway, I told him that I'm not going for the black at the moment over in Reading, and he said, "Nah, you can come out here." And there's been some real big commons getting caught, you know, in the £70 bracket. That was like my reason to come out here. Not just to catch a £70 common, but to come see and catch up with Mark, who I haven't seen for a long time. It's November the 1st now, the weather's lovely. I said, let's go over here. We've got the lake more or less to ourselves. I said, let's come over here and try and catch a few fish, but who knows, we might be able to target one of them big commons. It done a £72 common last week and a 65, and there's probably, I'm not 100% sure, half a dozen to a dozen more that are 60 plus, near enough going 70, you know, over 70. So we arrived here Sunday afternoon, so about 4.5 hour drive from Calais. Quite a nice drive, lovely straight roads as they have over here, never any traffic, so we had a good drive down here. We didn't get here till late afternoon, sort of after 2:30, something like that, and it was the morning of the clocks going back, so we'd already lost an hour in, I think we gained an hour, but we lost an hour of daylight. So I was in a bit of a, you know, you spend a lot of time chatting and catching up and all that, but really, we're here to catch a fish, and we needed to get the rods out. The first night for me was a bit of a washout. I mean, by the time I got them out, it's pitch black. Couldn't see a thing. It was really dark place here. There's no light pollution anywhere. There's no light. It's just black. You know, you can't even see walking around the lake. It is black. And getting the rods out, I kind of basically had to sort of just pub chuck them, really. Gaz was a few swims down from me, and using his little method, he likes a little bag that produced the goods for him. 30 plus mirror and real nice fish. So Gaz was already off the mark, which he was happy about. I hadn't caught nothing, but the next day I thought to myself, I need to get things sorted here for the night ahead, and just into dark managed to, well, we was all sitting there having a little catch up as you do, and one of the rods absolutely melted off. And I was a little, not far from the rods, but I couldn't even see the path back to my rods. It was that dark. Absolute belter. Fish rucked like crazy, and a 30 plus common was caught. I was off the mark, thankfully, which was great. Right, first fish for me, second night. Last night was a little bit of a rush job. We didn't get here till, well, we got in good time, but with the clocks going back, and it left us no time to get the rods out properly. So tonight I got the rods out properly. I'm having a little chat on the bank there, and it absolutely melted off. And this fish fought like the clappers. Had a good old long battle with it. Very powerful, and a great way for me to start my session. The fish was put back, and not long after that, around about 8:30, it absolutely started to hammer it down, which was an early night for us all then, so we all retreated back to the bivvies, and Gaz went off to his swim, and I was quite tired, so I was quite pleased to get in the bivvy and get my head down, or at least try and have a rest. And at some time, excuse me, I think about 10:30, 11, something like that, I leant over and read a message from Gaz, and he's had one in that absolutely torrential downpour, and I did chuckle because I knew he would have had to been out there in the rain trying to sort this out, and he did. Fair play, mate. He went out there and done self-takes in torrential rain and actually got some really good shots, and it was a bonus for me because I didn't have to get out and get wet, and it was a bonus for him because he caught a nice fish and got some really good shots. So that sort of was all that happened in the night. It carried on raining throughout the night, and I was hearing fish further down the other end of the lake, and it was pretty quiet actually down my end. And then breakfast this morning, rods back out, and just sitting here doing a bit to camera, and the right hand rod indicated a good old fashioned drop back. You don't really, I said to Gaz before, I've not really fished where I haven't had sort of drop backs for a long time, like, you know, but because I'm backleading now, I've got the bobbins at the top, so I did have an occurrence like that yesterday. The bobbin dropped down, and I was wondering then whether I'd actually been done because the lead had been moved. So it was a drop back on the right hand rod, and wound down, lifted into it, yeah, and we're in. It was kiting off to the left, gave a real good scrap. There's a little bit of argy-bargy where it was crossing the other lines and everything, but managed to sort all that out. They seem to be scrapping in here at the minute, give a good account of itself, and then another big chunky common went into the net. Lovely. Whew. Certainly took it around the lake a bit, that one. Not quite our 50, 60 or 70, but nevertheless, well pleased. And yeah, I think it went 37.5, something like that. So we got a few snaps of that and slipped it back. And now, it's Tuesday now, we've got 3 more days and nights before we go. So hopefully during that time, we will get the chance to catch one of the Tangler Fays magical great big commons. What a glorious November morning here in the Tangler Fays. A reasonably quiet night last night across the whole lake really, until this one pulled away this morning. Lovely mirror, nice scale pattern on it. The fish I've been catching have all come on a method that I don't normally use in the UK. Well, not so much a method, but a rig. I'm going to go into more detail with that soon, after we get this one put back. I'd just like to talk to you about how my rig differs over here in France to back home in the UK. Back in the UK, I'm always on kind of like size 4s really. I never really use anything less than that, apart from zig fishing, floater fishing, stuff like that. But over here in France, it's just totally different. The way it all come about was just through speaking to Mark, the owner of the lake here. I've known Mark for over 25 years. He's obviously very, very knowledgeable in his own water, and I remember years, I come here for my first trip sort of 20 years ago, and since then we've chatted about rigs, and I've just remembered something he said way back, was that how on this lake, his fish, they just seem to be aware of being fished for, and like they do in all waters, but it's the clutter that's attached to rigs these days. I call it clutter, but you know, just too much. What he tries to do is get it back down to the bare basics, and by that I mean nothing on the main line, no leaders, just bare line and a lead clip. Very, very basic setup to sort of 10 or 11 inch braided hook link. But the thing that's different for me over here than the UK is how small the hooks are. I'm using a size 8 at the minute, something I wouldn't dream of using in the UK. And I just remember Mark saying how it really is effective, and I used it over here on one of the trips I'd done, and ended up having 11 or 12 fish on it, on little tiny size 8 hooks and braided hook link. But the secret's in the long hair, I'm sure. I could have come over and chucked choddies out or ronnies and that, and I just don't really think I would have caught anything. I might have had a bite, but my confidence is in this, my confidence. But back in the UK, would I be confident in this? I really don't know. I've still not tried it. But the rig itself is just so basic. It's just a lead clip, a little sleeve on the lead clip, a little boom here. I still use a heavy lead, 3.5 ounce lead, 10 to 12 inches of supple braid, little size 8 wide gape. And then the bait side of it can be anything from a little snowman to a wafter, a little barrel, or just a heavy bottom bait. But the secret, I think, is in the long hair. This is not particularly long. I think the other rods are a little bit longer. I'll use anything from like 1 inch, 2 inch hair on it with no problems whatsoever. And the little tiny hook, you'd think, how on earth is that going to hook them? But when I'm landing the fish, they're always hooked in the scissors, right in the scissors. These are big fish, and I'm playing them on big rods with little size 8s. There's no movement in the hook. The hook is really secure in the scissors, and all I can think is they're coming over this, they're coming over a bed of bait, they're sucking the whole thing in without even knowing it. And by the time they're ejecting it, that little hook is just rammed straight in the scissors. And they're strong, so because of that fact, they don't come out. I'm well confident in them. A little bit of silicone on the shank there, just to keep it offset where you want it to offset the hook. Sometimes I'll do it a tiny bit longer, gives it like a little supple kicker. Apart from that, that is it. Absolutely basic. Like I say, hoping that we'll be able to catch one of the bigger residents in this lake at some stage later on during this session, and I'm sure I'll be well confident if I do using this setup. Here's further proof of the effectiveness of the rig that I've just shown you. Little tiny size 8 hook on a long hair and a great big gob like this one's got. Bringing in this short, fat, dumpy common. I'm hoping now that we're one step further, getting closer to the target of one of his bigger relatives. We'll do a couple of shots now and get us straight back, and hopefully a chance of another this afternoon. That was a nice disturbance to my coffee. Absolutely melted off in the afternoon sun. Couldn't be better. Not a great fan of back leads, but you have to have them on over here because like it's quite shallow in places close in, and the fish tend to go under the other rods, and it's nip one, pearl one then. Come on, this time. Get in! And out of the blue screamer this afternoon, and this fish here at just over 50 pound gets us back on target. We've not been disappointed with what we're getting, but they've not been over 40, and this lake has many fish over 40 and 50 pound, so we're starting to think that the target was slipping away, but now we're back on track. last night was an early night for me. I think about 9:30 I must have turned in, and I was out pretty quick. I was tired. Last night the fish were jumping all over the place. I just remember hearing them, and I just turned my back and looked the other way, like I thought if one of them's going to go, it's going to go. But yeah, very lively night on the fish front, but not so much on the well, we never had a bite. I did actually have an occurrence. I was awake early, about 4 o'clock, because I'd obviously gone to bed early. I'm one of them sort of people, if I go to bed early, I wake up early, and I was awake at 4, listening to them jumping, and I just had a few bleeps on one of the rods. As it goes, I was just dozing back off, and it sort of woke me up in the start. Nothing else happened. I thought, oh, I'm nearly asleep, so I sort of dozed back off. A little while later, I got up and realised that the bobbin had come off, and I'd obviously had an occurrence. When I picked the rod up, it was way to the left, way down, right down. I know the reason why. I'm using back leads. I'm not a big fan of them, but over here it's quite a necessity to have them on. It definitely hinders your take sometimes. Instead of a good old ripper, it kited left down there, and the consequences, I've lost the fish. But next time I'll make sure I'm up to the slightest bleep. I've got one more night left. We've got today and tonight, so we've got 24 hours. Quite confident. The lake has some amazingly big carp in here. We've started creeping up the weight scale. We're into 50 pounders now, so we've had a 50. If the carp gods are looking down on us, we might get a chance of cracking that magical number that we're after. I'm thinking now is if there's anything else I can do to catch one of them big uns, but I just think it's, on a lake like this, I think it's a numbers game really. I fished here many years ago, similar sort of situation this time of year, and to be honest, I weren't catching. I think the biggest I'd had a 38 mirror. I moved swims to the other side of the lake and had a 38, but I was catching a few smaller ones, and then right out the blue, a 65 mirror turned up. So there's every possibility that one will turn up, fingers crossed, but for me to do anything different, I don't think I can do anything different really. I think I'm doing all that I can do. It's just down to the fish now. This morning, I have changed one rod. I've seen most of the bubbling yesterday. I had a take yesterday afternoon, sort of over halfway of the lake, and after the take there were like a lot more bubbling going on in that zone. So with that in mind, I have moved one rod a bit further from where it was. My left hand rod is now fishing on the zone where I see the bubbling yesterday and where I had to take off my middle rod. That's all I've changed. Over the next 24 hours, I'm hoping that we get to bank one of the big fish in here, the big commons that I've seen the pictures of so many times, and I would love to break my PB, which is £65 over here. I'd like to break that and catch one of these massive, beautiful looking commons that he's got in the Tangler Fays. Really enjoyed this trip. It's been so nice just to get away. Whenever I'm over here, which ain't that often, I don't generally fish abroad, so when I come here, it feels like I'm on an holiday. I do relax, and I do feel like, I feel like I'm away. It's just a beautiful place to be in, and being away from the hard sort of angling that I do put myself under back in the UK it's nice. It's like an holiday for me. The fishing at the Tangler Fays can be absolutely outstanding, but to top all of that, first of all, the place is stunning. It's immaculate. The wildlife is amazing. At night, crystal clear nights with beautiful skies. The stars are out. We've had Jupiter up there every night. The food is, the food is next level. It's like restaurant food. It's just amazing. I've never been anywhere fishing-wise where I've had food to this standard. I mean, the chef, Mike, is unbelievable. And that really does make it, because if you are here fishing and maybe you're not catching, or you're soaked wet through, or whatever the reason being, if you're on a bit of a downer, you go in there and have a lovely meal, and it certainly puts a smile back on your face and it brightens up the day. The facilities are amazing. The showers are immaculately clean and hot water. He's got a lodge just down there that he does let to people if you want to come with a family, and you get the first swims along this bank. I've done it. I've fished there with my missus, and it really, when the sun's out, you've got sun loungers outside. It's just a holiday. It's just out of this world. If you want to bring your missus, it's the perfect place to bring her for the lodge, and all the rest of the facilities. The place is banging. But this trip here for me has been sort of like the wind down of the year for me. It's been quite a sort of challenging year with the hot weather we've had on my own fishery, and the highs and lows of fishing Reading for the baby black. This has been sort of like a nice sort of gentle ease off from the year's angling. A really lovely holiday. But I'll get back from here I've got 3 weeks. I will get the rods out. There's no stopping me when I live on 2 lakes. And I've got the river that I want to try and get a few nights on as well locally. But I am away soon. I'm away. When I get back from here, I've got the big countdown. Since COVID, I've not been to India. I've got my old job on the beach there, the old lifeguard job. So I've got to get back and get back in my trunks and get back on that beach and keep India safe. So I will be away in I think it's just over 3 weeks when I get back. So I'll be busy as hell over them 3 weeks. But whilst I'm away in India, all I can think about is my next targets, where I'm going next. And I've got something really special lined up. In fact, really, really special that I will be talking to you about at a later stage. So I'll be buzzing to get back to the UK early spring and get cracking again. We're rolling. Middle rod screamer. Absolutely belted off, just out of the blue. Been watching them bubbling this morning, thinking like, am I going to get one more bite before we go? Because we're off in a few hours. And there we have it. Feels alright. Took me right over there down the bay. Proper plodding. A few bubbles coming up. Go. If that ain't testament to size 8 hook, I don't know what is. I need to get my other hoodie on because I'm going to get soaked, guys. What's left of the rig, a little yellow tipper's gone, but a little size 8 once again doing the business. Unbelievable, nice long hair, tiny, tiny hook for such big carp. Well, yesterday the rain came in and I thought it was going to stir it up and we was going to have a few fish, but actually it went really quiet. Very, very quiet. The rods are all out perfect last night. Hardly anything showing in the night. And then this morning, rain, consistent rain, just while we've got to pack up. And out of the blue, there was a bit of bubbling on one of the rods and a bit of bubbling close in. And out of the blue, we get an end of session saver and rattled off with this lovely, really hard fighting common. Yeah, we've had a fantastic few days over here in the Tangler phase. Batteries recharged. I'm now looking forward to having a nice break in the sun and then getting back and getting stuck in the new year on my new venture. Right, the last 2 rods to reel in of what's been an absolutely fantastic 4 days fishing over here at Tangler Fays. Really have had a great time. Didn't quite get the big 70 pounder. I did try to talk it up. You've got to have some sort of target to keep you motivated, and that's what I came here for. But this particular trip, it wasn't to be. But I'm not going to complain that a 50 pounder. That's 5 fired me right up now. You know, that's finished my season with or my year's angling with a nice little touch, and I'm like already looking forward to next year. So hopefully you'll join me next year when I'm somewhere back on target.